Welcome back to another FPL video. Today we're going to be discussing the best differentials, but just to make it very clear, this is not going to be the best differential team. I certainly would recommend you building this exact 15-man squad, but I wanted to highlight 15 players with low ownership that can help boost you up the ranks, and all but 2 of them have under 10% ownership, and I'll be discussing why I've included 2 certain names in the midfield and the attack primarily to help boost your rank and get to a really good position from Game Week 1. So if you're not enjoying this video, smash the like button, subscribe for new, share this video around with those that love FPL. Also comment down below your thoughts. But let's get straight into this, starting with the goalkeepers. The first option we're going to talk about is Flecken, the goalkeeper signed by Brentford in May. And with David Raya heavily linked with a move away, starting with Tottenham Hotspur, of course, in the summer, and now he's linked to many other clubs such as Manchester United, it's very likely that he's going to leave the club and Flecken will become the new #1 goalkeeper. And he was excellent for Freiburg last season, making 109 saves. But he didn't make any single penalty save, to be fair, but it's very difficult for goalkeepers to do that. Not everyone will be a penalty shootout hero, but Flecken is still a really good option, I think, at 4.5 million. To put into context, David Raya scored 166 points, which was the most of any FPL goalkeeper. And if Flecken comes in, makes a similar amount of saves, and Brentford build upon what they did last season, then I think he could actually match or even surpass that total. Now, kind of an early prediction, I don't think he'll reach 166 points just yet, but I think he will get there or thereabouts. And if Flecken can nail down that #1 spot, which I think will happen, and with some really good long-term fixtures, he could be the best goalkeeper in the game to start Game Week 1 with. But of course, that will be heavily dependent on David Raya leaving the club and Flecken coming in as the #1 goalkeeper. And the second one we've got here on screen is Johnston, who's got around 1.2% ownership. He has kept 3 clean sheets last season, but he only played a handful of minutes towards the end of the season under Roy Hodgson, who is now going to be the manager yet again for Crystal Palace. He made 26 saves, got 5 bonus points, and he got 36 FPL points overall. But Johnston also got a double-digit return there, and also some really big returns amongst that period. So I think Johnston could also be a solid option. His fixtures aren't quite as good as Flecken's, and also Crystal Palace you wouldn't expect to be as solid defensively as Brentford, but I still think Johnston's a solid option. If you're looking for a 4.5 million goalkeeper, then apart from Leno and Pickford will be the 2 most popular options. I think Flecken and Johnston could be the 2 best at 4.5 million. We have 5 different yet very interesting options in the defence, starting with Pedro Porro, who made a loan move in January and has now been made permanent in the summer to Tottenham Hotspur, and he comes in at 5 million and his ownership is 4.4%. He scored 3 times and also assisted 3, and he got 5 bonus points and 59 FPL points overall. And Tottenham have some very good fixtures starting from Game Week 3. To kickstart Game Week 1, I'm a bit unsure about Pedro Porro despite his attacking output, because Brentford away and Man United at home, I don't see a clean sheet there for Tottenham Hotspur, and I could also actually see them conceding quite a few goals in the opening 2 games as they get accustomed to their new manager. Another defender that comes in at the exact same ownership as Pedro Porro is Ben Chilwell, who scored twice and assisted 3, and he also had 11 shots in the box and 70 FPL points. And of course, he's been there since the beginning of the season, so Pedro Porro has been more impressive, at least in the last season. But we all know Chilwell's high ceiling, but he has to stay fit, and Chelsea have to be much better this time round. I think they will have a significant improvement under Mauricio Pochettino, but I'm still a bit unsure about the likes of Chilwell and Reece James in terms of minutes and staying fit, because if they play week in, week out, you know they'll be 2 of the highest scoring defenders in the game. And Chelsea, a bit similar to Spurs, don't have the best opening portion to the season for the first 2 game weeks, especially when you look at that Liverpool fixture in Game Week 1. But the last 5 or 6 games, I believe, have been 0-0 in that fixture. I think that will certainly change this time round, but you're really looking at Chelsea assets from Game Week 3 onwards, and they've got some fantastic long-term fixtures. Then we go to the third defender, Ben Mee. Now, he's actually got higher ownership than the likes of Pinnock and Rico Henry, but you can take your pick from those 3. I think Ben Mee is the best of the 3, but you also have to take price into account, and if you want someone a bit cheaper and with low ownership, then I would go for either Rico Henry for the assist for it. He also got an assist in pre-season in their 1-1 draw against Boreham Wood, but you've also got other options like Pinnock, who's got a bit of attacking threat as well. But Ben Mee certainly is the best in that regard. He got 3 goals and 2 assists, and he had 28 shots inside the box, which is terrific, as well as 143 FPL points to be one of the highest scoring defenders last season. Now, I can't say the same thing about Akanji. He doesn't really have goal threat. He didn't score a single goal last season, only 1 assist and 5 bonus points. And Man City defenders didn't really you know, set the world alight. None of them reached 100 points. Even Nathan Ake, who was the highest scoring defender. Ruben Dias had a lot of injury problems. Then you look at others like John Stones. He really came into a league of his own at the very end, but he didn't start every single Premier League game, and his minutes can be managed to avoid getting any injuries because he is quite an injury-prone player. But I think Akanji or any Man City defender, if you can nail down that right one for the first 6-7 game weeks of the season, you can see plenty of clean sheets, but there will be rotation, and that will always be an issue with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City defenders. And the final defender is Robertson, who is historically a fantastic FPL option. He didn't score a single goal last season, but he still provided 8 assists, 10 bonus points, and 121 FPL points overall. Does that justify 6.5 million as your price tag? Not really, but I still think he could do a terrific job there. And Robertson could be a good alternative to Trent Alexander-Arnold if you need that extra 1.5 million, because that is a big gap now between those two. Last season, for example, only 0.5 million separated those two, and you could see that Trent Alexander-Arnold was the clear standout from game week 1, but particularly in the final 9 to 10 game weeks of the season. And Liverpool have a bit of a mixed bag in terms of fixtures for the first 5, and in terms of fixtures overall from all the clubs we've covered here, Liverpool probably have the worst to start the season, but it's still not too shabby, and you can see some clean sheets and big returns, such as against Bournemouth at home in game week 2. So we have 4 differentials here and one that has over 10% ownership. But the reason why I wanted to highlight Martinelli is because when you compare him to an asset like Bukayo Saka, who's got 50% ownership, that 14% is massive, because if you own Martinelli and he scores a similar amount to Saka, which I believe he will do, then I think you will get some really significant gains, also save $500,000, and you can invest that in another position in your squad. I genuinely believe Martinelli has the best goal threat of any Arsenal midfielder or asset in general, even when you compare him to Gabriel Jesus up front. I think Martinelli will score the most goals if he can stay fit, and he has had a few injury problems in the past, but I think he will be firing from the get-go, and he had a terrific end to this season. When Arsenal were crumbling and bottling some games, Martinelli was the one that appeared week in, week out. He was getting the goals and assists, trying to drag Arsenal through in the title race, and I think he is really a fantastic and overlooked option. I know he's got 14% ownership, but when you compare him to Odegaard at 20% and Saka, who's owned by half the game, I have to say Martinelli for me is probably as good, if not even better, of an FPL option. They all have some different pros and cons. Bukayo Saka is probably going to get the most goal contributions overall, and he also is on penalties. Odegaard's the best for bonus points, and you've got Martinelli, I think, who's going to score the most of those 3, but it's going to be really close between those, as it was last season, only 10-20 points separating them at most. But I think Martinelli can basically keep up with the other 2, save you $500,000, and also he's owned by much less and much fewer managers, and that is a huge plus. Arsenal have some fantastic fixtures to start the season. They do face the likes of Man United, Spurs and Man City at home in the first 9 game weeks, but the other fixtures look very promising. Even if Arsenal lose certain games like Everton away, which has been a bit of an unhappy hunting ground in recent years, Martinelli can still produce in those fixtures and be a very consistent asset in most game weeks. Then we go to Raheem Sterling, who comes in at 7 million. He experienced a massive price drop, one of the biggest of any player, alongside the likes of Heung-min Son, Bruno Fernandes, and a few others that we covered in the price reveals videos. Now, his ownership is also very encouraging here, and he scored 6 goals, 4 assists, and he got 101 FPL points. But when you look at some previous seasons and what he did for Man City, in the 2018-19 campaign, he scored 234 FPL points. Now, I don't see him ever reaching those heights again, but what he has shown is consistency. He always delivers 150 plus FPL points when he gets the minutes. And if Chelsea are better this season, are creating chances, and Sterling is receiving a lot of these big chances, then I think he will do very well, get easily into double-digit goals, maybe get also a few assists along the way, and give you plenty of bonus points and overall points for you to enjoy. But there are a lot of question marks, and Chelsea still might get to a rough start, and it might be a gradual and long process for them to get to the levels that they want to reach. But Raheem Sterling is certainly capable of giving you some mega returns. He can even get some double-digit hauls along the way. It's obviously going to be a very difficult one with Sterling, and I don't see him reaching the same heights as before, but I think he'll certainly improve upon last season. But it all depends on minutes, staying injury free, and Chelsea improving as a unit, and I think all of those will apply Then we go to Kai Havertz, a new signing for Arsenal. He was very underwhelming for Chelsea throughout his career. What kind of saved him was the big goals in the Club World Cup final, the Champions League final to win it as well. He scored 7 goals and got 1 assist last season, and he had 19 big chances. So his finishing is certainly questionable, but I think at Arsenal he'll have a new lease of life. He might play this midfield role that he did at Bayer Leverkusen, which will get the best out of him, because as a striker, I just don't think that's Kai Havertz's best position. The same goes when he's playing as maybe a winger or an inside forward on either side. When he's playing just behind the striker, or even potentially as a left central midfielder in the kind of Xhaka role from last season, I think that's where Havertz could thrive. Do I think he'll be the same kind of value or offer more attacking returns and FPL points than the likes of Saka, Odegaard and Martinelli? Not really, but he's certainly one to watch at around 6.5% ownership, and I think he can definitely build upon 102 FPL points that he did last season. But if it's a question of Havertz or Martinelli right now, I'd certainly go for Martinelli, even if his ownership is over double, but I think there's a really good reason for that as well. Then we go to the other midfielders like Heung-min Son, who is now at 9 million. Remember, he was 12 million last season, and he was the Golden Boot winner from the season before, and his ownership is now 5.6%, around that mark. It certainly changes all the time, but he's always been under 6% whenever I've made videos and talked about Heung-min Son. He still scored 10 goals last season and got 6 assists and 152 FPL points overall, but it was a very underwhelming campaign, and he had a pretty good end to the season. Not the best, but he was a bit more consistent with the returns. A lot of benchings though. I don't think that'll be the case this season with a new manager, and I think Heung-min Son will probably thrive in a new role, potentially as one strike partner alongside Harry Kane instead of playing a bit too wide on the left-hand side. But look, whether you can blame Conte or how bad Spurs are as a team or were last season, Heung-min Son still had some issues, and he was also partly at fault for his underwhelming campaign. But I think he'll have a much better season this time round, potentially reach 200 FPL points, and if he does that at 9 million, I mean, what more can you ask for? Rashford, who just scored 200 points in the last campaign, is now priced at 9 million too, and Heung-min Son is certainly capable of doing that, as he has shown on multiple occasions. He can always give you at least 170 points or above, and I think that's what he'll do this time round as well. And as I talked about with Pedro Porro earlier, Spurs has some very good fixtures from Game Week 3 onwards. The final midfield I want to talk about is Pascal Gross. You could also include someone else like Buonanotte, but most importantly Solly March, who's got even lower ownership than Pascal Gross. But I think Pascal Gross is just such an underrated option. We never really talk about him enough. He gets a lot of minutes. He's probably the most nailed on Brighton midfielder, and he also gets a lot of attacking returns season in, season out. He got 9 goals and 8 assists last season, 14 bonus points and 159 FPL points overall, which is more than Matoma, Solly March or any other Brighton asset, period. And the first 3 fixtures are fantastic for Brighton. After that, it does get a bit more hectic with Newcastle at home and Man United away. But for the first 3 game weeks of the season, I think going for 2 Brighton midfielders could be the play. You can go for your Matoma, who's owned by most of the game, but you could also include a differential in there like Solly March or Pascal Gross, who could do a terrific job. And here we have the 3 forwards, 2 differentials in Gakpo and Morris, and Harry Kane, who once again, just like Martinelli, has over 10% ownership, but is still only around 16%. And once again, when you compare him to Erling Haaland, who's owned by 85% of the game, Harry Kane is a mega differential. Now, it's going to be difficult to justify going for Harry Kane over Erling Haaland, but they scored a similar amount of goals last season and FPL points. I think Kane can keep up with Erling Haaland, assuming he stays at Tottenham Hotspur, and if he does depart, if he stays in the Premier League. And I think with the fixtures, I mean, he's fixture proof anyway, but Harry Kane was just so consistent, and he would have gotten a lot more credit last season if Erling Haaland didn't exist or didn't come to the Premier League, period. But at 16% ownership for a guy who scored 30 goals, got 9 assists, and also 48 bonus points, which is the most of any player, I think Harry Kane is still overlooked despite coming in at 12.5 million, which is maybe arguably a bit too generous. I think it's probably a fair price, but when you compare him to Erling Haaland, he might actually be better value for money. But of course, a lot of you may disagree in the comment section, and that's completely fair enough. But I genuinely think Harry Kane is a differential when you compare him to Erling Haaland, coming in around 16% ownership. Now with Cody Gakpo, he's certainly a differential, around 5% ownership. He scored 7 times and assisted 3, and he joined in January. He also got 4 bonus points and 90 FPL points overall. There will be rotation with Liverpool forwards, with the exception of Mohamed Salah potentially, because you've got Luis Diaz coming back, Diogo Jota, Darwin Núñez, Gakpo. So there's a lot of competition for all those places, but I think Gakpo will start most games, and Liverpool don't have the best start to this season, but I still think in fixtures like Bournemouth at home, that's where the likes of Gakpo could go crazy and deliver some mega returns, just like he did against Leeds United last season. Then we've got Morris, who is probably the best budget striker, or at least the best striker from the newly promoted clubs. He comes in at 5.5 million. He scored 20 times in the Championship last season, got 7 assists, but he also got 11 yellow cards, so watch out for that. It might be a bit frustrating because you could get out of the bonus points with these yellow cards that he picks up, and he also could prevent you from getting some mega returns, and instead of getting you 6-7 points at least, he might give you those 5 or 4 pointers, which might be a bit frustrating. But he also started 41 out of 44 games, so he only came off the bench 3 times, and remember the Championship is a very long season, and Morris was absolutely integral to Luton Town being promoted. It's a pretty difficult start with Brighton away and also a few other fixtures like Chelsea away and West Ham at home, but I think Morris could actually do pretty well from the get-go. I'm not really expecting a return in Game Week 1, but from Game Weeks 2 to 5, there's no reason why he can't return in every single one of those games, particularly Burnley at home and Fulham away. But Morris has a really good chance, I think, of setting the world alight and potentially becoming the best option for your third slot in the forward position, and he could become a fan favourite in FPL very quickly. But I'm actually quite apprehensive about a lot of these newly promoted clubs and their assets, but Morris isn't one of them, and he's someone I'm actually considering for my final team, and he might even be included in some of the upcoming drafts I release on this channel. But let me know what you think of this differential team. As I said, Martinelli and Harry Kane aren't the biggest differentials you ever see, but when you compare them to similar assets at a similar price, or maybe even more expensive, and their ownerships, then I think that's where the gains can come from, and their ownership is still relatively low when you make those comparisons. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and also check out the link for Draft Hound. I'd highly recommend it. That's what I'm going to be using as well to help set up my team with predicted points and also chance of scoring, and a few other stats that you're going to be seeing on this channel will be coming directly from Draft Hound if you upgrade to the Pro tier, so I'd highly recommend it. Be sure to check out the link in the description below. Thank you very much for watching this video. I very much appreciate it as always, and I'll see you very soon for more FPL content.